So I just need to do a few bits and bobs, and then we'll jump back and get straight back into it. Okay, man?
Sounds great.
So, as always, we record the sessions for people to catch up later. So for those who can't make it, or if you missed any of the previous shows, you can grab them on YouTube. Just head over to the channel where you'll find hundreds of videos, educational and analytical, all guided by DappRadar. It can really help you to get along in your Dapp journey and start understanding what's going on out here. So, what's been going on this week in the world of Dapps? Well, quite a lot already, and it's only Wednesday. We had the OpenSea phishing hack sort of caught the news on Monday. Quite a simplistic kind of hack that has seen, I think we have got 17 confirmed cases there so far. It's basically just a very simple email hack that's tricking people into believing they've got offers on their NFTs. Crypto Chicks NFTs facing plagiarism issues after some news came out that the entire collection had been copied. Puma aped into the NFT space and has locked in their ENS name as well, showing some clout. And also Binance Chain and Binance Smart Chain are becoming BNB Chain. A lot of chains and a lot of Binance, but to be honest, not major, any real changes needed on our end, just a sort of rebrand and a redirection on their side. And also some analysis of Polygon and the POS bridge shows that a lot of capital is flowing into Polygon right now as traders are still looking outside Ethereum to make their moves. But that was just a little fraction of what's been happening this week already. So much more on the blog, or as I like to call it, the beating heart of the Dapp industry. Obviously, I call it that because I also write for the blog, so you know. Lots of good information over there. So without further ado, let's get into the matter at hand. Every week, I sit down with the brightest minds, leading protocols, blockchain games and NFT projects, and DeFi dapps, and we dig in to get a better idea of what's in store for them in the coming months and the year. And most importantly, we give you, the community members, a chance to ask the questions and also ask the difficult questions. So with that in mind, surely none of you could have missed over the last sort of 6 months is the rise of play-to-earn gaming and gaming dapps interweaved with DeFi and NFT mechanics. They've become wildly popular of late, and DeFi Kingdoms is one of the rising stars. Not only are DeFi Kingdoms attracting record numbers of users, but they're also knocking on the door of mainstream customers looking for an on-ramp to crypto. So before we dive right in, and we start to chat with Mr. Fox and throw some questions at him, I just want to get everyone on the same page with DeFi Kingdoms. So here's a quick 411, all right? DeFi Kingdoms arrived on the Harmony blockchain in late August 2021. It describes itself as a game, a DEX, a decentralized exchange, a liquidity pool opportunity, and a market of rare utility-driven NFTs, all played out in the nostalgic form of fantasy pixel art and the timeless appeal of farming. So it sounds pretty cool. Its native token is Jewel, and it's increased from its launch price of around $1.21 at launch to $5.84 today, hitting a high of over $20 in early January. This is quite impressive, I think. The total value locked in DeFi Kingdoms to date is more than 612 million, which represents a staggering almost 60% of the total value locked on Harmony today. Pretty impressive, man. Okay, so Fox, let's jump in, all right? Amidst all the hype right now surrounding these kind of play-to-earn and GameFi dapps, I want to jump into what I call the elevator pitch. I want you to pretend that you're kind of stuck with me in an elevator. We're in there for about a minute. I've got a t-shirt on that says I'm an investor, and I want you to use that minute to impress me and tell me about DeFi Kingdoms and why I should be paying attention. Go, man, go.
Oh boy, great. Well, I'm a coder, first of all, not much of a salesman, but I do love talking about my project. And when you look at DeFi, it's really changed the world. The ability to cut out the middleman, to have trustless banking and staking and things like that is really revolutionary. What you see is a lot of apps that basically copy-paste some of the protocols that are out there, Uniswap, SushiSwap, and others. And you see they're kind of like a dime a dozen. And unfortunately, what you see is a lot of traders will hop from one to another, chasing those high APRs for a week, and then they'll pull their liquidity and they'll move on to the next thing. So the issue comes up of how do you get people to stay? How do you get your token to maintain its value over the long term? You have to be more than just a DEX. You have to have something that adds additional utility to that token besides just the voting power. And that's really what came about with precipitating this idea for DeFi Kingdoms, is that we have a game that provides utility for the DEX token. And so it's kind of like adding more and more layers of utility on it so that when you're staking to earn that jewel, that jewel will have lasting utility because there's a demand for it. It's not just a bunch of supply and no demand. So it's really a lot safer and a lot stronger of a token to stake for, which then in turn is a symbiotic relationship with the DEX and makes it so that the DEX can actually maintain its value.
An amazing
so
explanation.
That's about it.
No, that's killer. And I really like the way you started there with the kind of copy and paste side. I was just writing an article talking about that today, actually, sort of liquidity jumping, users jumping from place to place. It's a real problem that we saw during 2020 and last year as well, actually. So yeah, I'm glad that you touched on that straight away. So, okay, so I've got my investor t-shirt on. I'm pretty excited about what you just said. And now I want to jump in a bit deeper, man. So for those people who have no idea what we're talking about here, like DeFi Kingdoms is just 2 words. How would you describe DeFi Kingdoms to them? And also, how would you describe the kind of last, let's say, it's been around 6 months since launch. So we talk about the ups, the downs, the kind of sideways movements. What have been the wins and losses, man? But firstly, just briefly, what would you say is DeFi Kingdoms to a sort of newbie?
Sure. So DeFi Kingdoms started out as basically a regular DEX where people can come, provide liquidity, which essentially means that they provide the tokens that other users will use when they're swapping tokens. So instead of us being a centralized exchange, we're a decentralized exchange where anyone, you and I, can go and say, we have some Ethereum tokens and we have some Harmony One tokens. We're going to pair them, provide liquidity, and anytime other people trade, I'll earn some of that fee from that trade. So it really allows regular people to earn an income or a return off of their assets. So we started out the gate with that, and then within a week or two, I mean, it started out as like a regular DEX, but it was wrapped inside of this nostalgic RPG style world where you have a map, you have a marketplace, you have a bank, and NPCs inside of those places that help you to facilitate your trades. And so it's this whole new way of like presenting the idea of a DEX to the end user in a way that's easier for people to understand, because everyone can understand, oh, I'm in a marketplace, I'm speaking with a trader, or I'm in the bank, I can speak with the banker.
Yep.
So yeah, that's just like a easier way to onboard people really into the DeFi space, because I've had so many friends over the years. I've been involved for a few years in this space, and trying to explain to them, okay, you got like liquidity pools, you got impermanent loss, you've got staking and like farming, and they're like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense.
You, right? Like,
right.
Look through you.
So it is a lot easier to explain to people when you have like a visual element like that, Yeah. But then like within a week or two, we actually started actively working on our NFTs, which is a big part of the game side of it. So here in this kingdom, we're basically creating a real world economy inside of a game in a very like Ready Player One metaverse sort of style. And so the ability for like users to essentially invest in these assets, these like NFTs, which are not just your regular NFTs that you would probably be familiar with in terms of art. It's actually dynamic NFTs that are heroes that can change, that can grow and can level up and can quest and can earn you things in our game. So it's this whole new breed of NFTs that are out there. So we started out with 2,000 Gen Zeros that we launched, I believe it was sometime in September. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact date. But I do remember. Yeah, so like these Gen Zeros basically form the gene pool origin of all of the hero NFTs that are minted after, because in order to mint more hero NFTs, you have to combine 2 existing hero NFTs. So it has a very strong ROI prospect on that. And so I remember we were trying to figure out what price we wanted to sell it for, and we knew that it would have a very strong ROI, but we also wanted to get early investors rewarded basically for coming and staking with us. So we decided on a fair price of 1,000 joules, which was our tokens, up to 2,000 joules. And you asked about like what are some of the ups and downs we saw, some of like the moments in our history. One of those moments was this sale, because we went back and forth on that, and in the end we decided, yes, let's do 1,000 joules, and at the time joule was $1.50.
Yep.
And so everyone was like, okay, that's at least $1,500 up to $3,000 for each NFT. And it was kind of unheard of on the Harmony blockchain, because all of the NFTs that had been launched up until then had a price of maybe $50. So this was much more expensive than any other thing we'd ever seen. And I remember hearing people saying, there's no way you're going to sell any of these, or like it'll just flop. So we opened it up, and I think 11 minutes later we'd sold them all, and it was $4.5 million worth of NFTs that were sold. And I just remember it was just this eye-opening like moment where I was like, okay, we're onto something here.
Yeah, man. That's amazing. Like that, also that kind of arrogance to stick with your pricing. And like, I'm not saying arrogance in a bad way. I'm saying it in a good way. Like, it's great. Like you
confidence,
should,
maybe.
Yeah. Confidence with your pricing, and setting a new benchmark perhaps. And people associate value with price. So I don't think you did anything crazy there. I think it was a good move, man.
Thank you.
Sure, definitely.
Yep.
But yeah, like the okay, cool. So we kind of know what it's all about, and we've got the NFT part of it, which we'll dive into a little bit deeper later as well. But I just want to get like the kind of top line information, and also a question that I have that I'll just inject now is that what was the kind of motivation behind the artwork that was used? Because it's quite, for me, kind of Zelda looking, and for somebody my age, I'm touching 40 almost. Like that makes sense for me. Was there a motivation behind that in that sort of demographic of user, or is it not really something that was thought about and it just played out like that?
Well, it was a little both, because I'm also about that same age, and I think a lot of my friends and a lot of people that are beginning to have more income that's like disposable, that they're starting to look into investing. They're also involved in the crypto space because they're still like young enough that they are still sort of on the cutting edge of all of these like new technologies out there. So it's really, that's the target demographic that is currently very much involved in crypto. Those that grew up on Zelda and grew up on Final Fantasy and some of those old RPGs with 8-bit style graphics, those were some of our childhood earliest memories, and there's a lot of like nostalgia there. So yeah, that was a part of it for sure.
Okay, cool. No, I thought so. I just wanted to put a pin in it, really. But yeah, nice moves, man. So the team.
Sorry. It's also kind of a harken back. When you look at the blockchain space today, we're very nascent still. Like we're in sort of, it's akin to the early 90s with the internet. That's sort of where we're at right now with the blockchain. And so like you saw a lot of games start out, very basic like that. And that's kind of what we're doing here as well. Like, let's make a very basic game that can run on the existing architecture of the blockchain, which is still, again, very nascent. So you're trying to find something that matches that.
Yeah, sure. It's a really good point, man. I think sometimes just something that we clarify, we call them games, but we're discussing DeFi tools here. We're talking about as you said, when you visualize the marketplace, but you guys call it a tavern. So it's that kind of difference in approach to it, which I really like, actually. But the team, so the team is made up of how many people, and why do you think that the guys and girls that you've got are best placed to take DeFi Kingdoms to where you want to go?
Sure, yeah. So the team is one of our strong points, I feel, because, like, it started out as sort of like a passion project. I was employed as a director at my old company that I was with, and found myself not having as much creative outlet anymore. So I'm like, hey, let's build something. I had some friends, and we're like, hey, let's create something awesome. So we did, and it just really took off. So at that point, we started hiring a lot to try to keep pace with it, because we knew there was this opportunity there to really have this be big, but we knew that we needed a very good, strong team to do so. So at the start, it was very much, who is willing to take a chance on this sort of really volatile environment, to where like we're not sure what's going to happen a month from now or 6 months from now in terms of like the space, because it's always got crazy ups and downs, right? Yeah. So it was starting out where trying to find those that had the eye to the future, that could see the potential, and were excited about it. And we were like extremely fortunate to get a lot of really good people in those early stages. And then as it started to grow more and more, it started to become more and more of a safe bet for people, and we were able to snag some of the most skilled and most experienced, highest paid individuals out there, and even like steal them from other companies, as it were. But like we offered top dollar for top talent, and we really aggressively grew out that team. And so currently there's 50 or so people on our core team. And it's all like walks of like expertise. And we've got like really good marketers, blockchain devs, Solidity and like React people, and API and servers, and biz dev and creative and artists and like musicians, just like the whole 9 yards basically now. So we have a really great team, and we're really well positioned to just deliver on our timeline and continue to push that envelope into this next year.
Nice, man. So aside from the sort of core team and the people there, they obviously have contributed massively towards the success of DeFi Kingdoms, but what else would you say were kind of the main contributing factors, do you think? I mean, we nailed the NFT sale. Amazing. That was a really early win that put some money in the bank and gave you, finances to do things with. But what else is kind of contributed, do you think? And do you think that launching on Harmony, which for me, being a guy that's been staring at blockchains for almost 5 years, I almost wouldn't expect you to launch on Harmony. Can you tell us like about the motivation for Harmony? And then we'll get into like the contributing factors a bit.
Yeah, certainly. So Harmony was a choice that we made almost last minute. We had a few contenders we were looking at. We were trying to find blockchains that had very low finality, like around 2 seconds, which there were a few, and also had really low gas. And the reason for that is we weren't trying to be like other games that were incorporating NFTs into their game as sort of an afterthought, where if you earn items in the game, they'll also mint you a NFT. Ours was actually trying to put all of the game logic and code for the game itself on the blockchain. Excuse me. So if you have the entire game on the blockchain, which no one had ever attempted in the past, then you're basically faced with the prospect of having to do very complex calculations on this blockchain as well, and that means gas. It means it's going to use a lot of gas.
Yeah.
So if we were to run some of our transactions on Ethereum, for example, you'd be looking at over $1,000 per transaction. And if you're sending your heroes on quests and having them do things there, everything is a transaction.
Yeah. So
that would be very, very expensive, and you wouldn't really be able to play to earn at all because you'd be losing money on the game. So Harmony was the chain that had the cheapest prices for gas. It was well under a cent for every transaction. So we were like, okay, I think it was like a week prior to launch, we're like, okay, let's for sure do Harmony. And then we launched it, and I still like vividly remember, it's a very tight ecosystem there, and everybody kind of knows everyone.
Yeah.
But our team was basically completely new to that ecosystem. So after we launched, a lot of people were like, whoa, like, where did this come from? Who are you guys? We don't have any idea what was going on here. And I think Lee, Harmony Lee, who is like sort of like one of the founders, reached out, and he was like, who are you guys? Like, how did we not know you guys were launching on our chain? And so that was the start of a nice like relationship there that we have cultivated now with their team. But at that point, it's like nobody knew us, and we were pretty new to the scene.
No way. I always kind of wondered that, whether DeFi Kingdoms had kind of launched hand in hand with the Harmony blockchain, as it were. But that's a fascinating answer you've just given me, because it's no is the answer, basically. The complete opposite is what happened. Amazing. Well, what about the kind of contributing factors then? Like, I mean, there's obviously macro factors that fed into this as well. We had COVID, which has kind of led people to be more inclined to stay at home and looking for and then inflation being at ridiculous levels and not looking to calm anytime soon. People are looking for side hustles. So we kind of got those macro impacts that helped along. But in regards to the kind of space that you guys operate in, what were the major contributing factors? Like, how did you just keep growing and growing?
Yeah, so we launched right after a pretty big dip.
Yes.
Harmony 1 token was at 20 cents or 22 cents in like June, I think, or like May, and they had a big dip. They went down to 5 cents, started to climb back up, and we launched right at the climb there, which was nice. There was a little bit of a wave to ride as it actually went up to high 30s, and so that was nice. And then pretty much across the space, you saw that wave kind of going up for all of the blockchains. So there was a lot of hype, there was a lot of excitement in anything that was new in that space, and that's certainly what we were, was something that was brand new. Like, no one else had tried to combine DeFi with GameFi. Actually, I think I recall back in early August there was an article published about GameFi and how it was this new term that was being coined, and we had already been like working on our game for at least a month and a half at that point. We're like, oh, like this is us. Like, we hadn't actually like realized that it was this entirely new thing, that we were basically doing this brand new thing, and we're some of the first movers there. So we had the first mover advantage, and trying to maintain that first mover advantage was very important, and is still very important in our minds, in terms of expanding to other blockchains as well. So contributing factors: a lot of people staying at home, a lot of people looking for a safe haven for their assets, looking to blockchain as a hedge against inflation. And yeah, there were a lot of factors there that contributed. A lot of people also were just trying to get into the space at all, and they were trying to learn what it is. And so DeFi Kingdoms, again, with the very low barrier to entry in terms of understanding how things work and then explaining how things work, was a very good option there as well.
Yeah, definitely, man. When I was writing because I wrote a report on you guys a couple of weeks ago, just to kind of summarize everything in the last few months, and the first thing that I wrote about was the timeliness of the launch. It was something in my mind that just felt like as you say, a culmination of macro and all sorts of events were lining up in your favor at that moment in time. And listening to you now, it's almost like you guys didn't even know. You were just hanging out in some silo somewhere working on a cool game, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, actually we're we're here at the right moment in time. Amazing.
Yeah, it was, like, having that idea about, like, how do we solve this problem of DeFi that we see everywhere? Like, everybody doing a pump and a dump, copy paste. So really, it was about solving that problem, and I think that problem was something that many people were feeling, but no one had a good solution for. So we came along with the first really good solution to that, and a lot of people really latched onto that.
Yeah, I mean, let's. One question I've got, but let's not stay there for too long, is that you're on Harmony now, and I've seen that you've also launched on Avalanche. Is that right? And then wondering if there's more expansion plans or anything else you want to reveal today, or anything like that?
Yeah, so we announced back in December that we had plans to expand into Avalanche. And actually, since the very start of the launch back in August or September, we had already sort of announced plans to expand 4 times, basically, where half of our NFT genes of our like heroes are basically represented in Harmony itself. So like 8 classes for heroes are there, but there's another 8 classes that we have that can fit into the genome, and we're planning on basically doing 2 classes for each expansion that we're doing. And so very early on, we had other chains reached out to us. I think like maybe 2 or 3 weeks after we launched, Avalanche reached out to us and was like, hey, like, this is an amazing product, how do we get you onto our chain? And we've like spoken with others as well who also reached out, like FTM reached out, and Polygon, Matic, and a few others also have like reached out there as well. So we've kind of been trying to figure out which one that we wanted to do first, and we chose Avalanche because of their excitement and their like willingness to work with us and their strong ecosystem. And they also offer some very compelling things around like some of the new technology that they're about to be releasing soon there as well. So Avalanche, like, we're not quite there yet. We're very close, and we're planning on basically having that launch here in Q1. And so we're hard at work there. A lot of behind the scenes work is being done hand in hand with the Avalanche team. And we're very, very excited about that, to have those announcements start to come out.
Nice, that's awesome. So we all DappRadar also is tracking Avalanche, so we'll be able to look at your metrics across 2 chains soon and track the performance there as well. And any plans for any other networks in, let's say, Q2? Let's keep it a little bit more defined between now and Q2. Any more plans?
Yeah, so we haven't announced our next expansion yet, and we haven't really announced a timeline either, but we have actually a pretty good idea internally of what that looks like. With that said, like, we want to get one out the door first and see how it goes, and sort of like learn from like what went right, what could have been better, and make sure that each one will be even better than the last.
Very cool. I just want to put a shout into the audience. Don't forget, guys, you can ask all your questions. Just stick your hand up and I'll bring you onto the stage. So, Fox, right? We're talking about DeFi mechanics working inside a gaming platform, and we also spoke about these sort of copy and paste dApps, liquidity hunters, and the short-livedness of most of these sort of applications. What makes DeFi Kingdoms different in the tokenomics and how it works? Can you explain that to people because many people will be thinking, oh, it's another play to earn, it's another GameFi, and they may put you in a bracket. So let's get you out of that bracket and try and explain the tokenomics a bit more deeply in terms of how people can earn, why the token has its underlying stability, and other things like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Why has it been so strong, and how has it overcome those problems? I think a large part of it is, again, providing utility for that DEX token. Like, if you look at other DEXs that are really successful, they have to basically be the chain that has, the app that has the most liquidity on that chain. For other people to say, this is the one I want to go to, I can get the best rates, I can have the lowest amount of slippage, and it's like the place to be. And that sort of becomes a self-sustaining system where as more and more people trade, they earn more and more fees from it, which then allows them to reward those liquidity providers more and more. So when we launched on Harmony, I think SushiSwap was the main DEX, and behind them was ViperSwap, I want to say. And so we were up against some incumbents there, and so trying to figure out, like, are we trying to compete with them, or are we just trying to do our own thing and be a game? And the answer was both. We weren't necessarily trying to overtake anyone. We were just trying to make a compelling product. And we were very successful at that because we found that the Jewel token was really able to steadily grow in value instead of steadily shrink in value like a lot of these other DEXs, and hold the value that it has. So it became a very strong prospect for other people to come and stake the liquidity and have a pretty good idea that the earned jewels that they would get from that would still hold their value, and it would be something that would be positive ROI for them. So very quickly we grew, and we overtook ViperSwap, then we overtook SushiSwap, and I just remember at that point we were the largest DEX on Harmony, and that was sort of a eye-opening moment for us. And as a team, we went out and ate sushi to celebrate. And it was just this moment where we sort of realized that we can compete with other DEXs because we have a much more compelling utility-driven prospect and model than any of them have heretofore had. And that also played into talks with Avalanche. We had kind of talked about how would our expansion work? How did we want to do liquidity? Should we just try to be a game over on their chains and use other DEXs for liquidity, which would have worked?
We've seen that.
And instead of trying to compete with them.
See that often.
Right, yeah.
To be the key way to you traditionally perhaps would have partnered with Sushi to offer a staking pool or something for Jewel, but you didn't go that way. So again, it's interesting in that.
So actually we considered that, and we ran some models and said, okay, what are the pros and cons of this? And actually there's some really good existing projects over there, like Trader Joe and Pangolin. So we kind of went back and forth on that, and actually we have a very good relationship with Pangolin and have a incentivized pool there, and they're an awesome DEX. in the end, we decided, you know what? One of the worries that the Avalanche team had was you're not going to be able to compete with these other incumbents that are there in terms of a DEX. So instead of trying, you should just try to only do the game. And we ran some models and we said, you know what? We can compete with other DEXs that are there. We don't feel like we have to compete, but we also feel like we have a very compelling product there. And so we built our tokenomics around that with the idea that, we actually have a very, very compelling and strong utility-driven token that we will compete over there with.
It's kind of cool. I'm just thinking about Trader Joe as well, and how kind of it's quite a similar proposition over there at Trader Joe, isn't it? So interesting. So you've decided to go full launch on Avalanche and not sort of go down that road. But yeah, I mean, looking at the figures, I think you've got a strong, like you say, compelling reasons to go that direction.
Yep. Another thing that we did with our tokenomics, we actually borrowed a page from ViperSwap, where they sort of pioneered this new idea of having staking rewards being partially locked. And how those rewards worked was, I think it would be 95% locked on the rewards you get, and it was to incentivize people to hold their tokens.
Yeah.
And not immediately have access to them to sort of immediately sell and then cut onto the next project. So that was another thing we did. So on top of those compelling utility-driven mechanics, we also had that to sort of hold and encourage traders to hold on to their jewels and have it be still earning higher APR rates at the start, with the prospect that they are also locked and will start to vest over time. But we sort of took that a step further and said, let's make it such that over time, as the APRs lower because of more liquidity and more lowering stabilized multipliers, it would also increase the amount that can be unlocked immediately when you claim. So we had this idea of epochs that would sort of reduce the multiplier but increase the amount that gets unlocked immediately. So it sort of resulted in a much more stable and steady outflow of jewels, but still rewarding those that are coming earlier into our project all the way down until it's all the way unlocked, basically. So it's a lot more stable and steady, and a lot more secure in terms of you can earn higher amounts if you're earlier, and yet if you come later, you still can earn the immediate amounts. That's basically the same as the very early days as well.
Yep. Which is kind of different to most platforms, again, as you said. And also, I think there's an element there where you have to have confidence in your project in order to do something like that, right? Because you're running a risk there of everybody kind of locking up, sitting back, waiting for progress. Progress doesn't come, so then they bail out, and you suffer in that sense. So I think it's a bold move. Again, I'm saying it in a good way. It's a bold move, and it's worked. So that's great. And just to go into the onto the NFTs a little bit more, because we spoke about them briefly for a second there before. And so we know that players need heroes to join in the game, right? That's the premise of it. So what's the floor price of a hero today?
Floor price, I think it's 40 to 50 jewels. And that is at the current rate, I don't know, close to $200 to $300, maybe $400 for some of those. So yeah, that was one of the things that early on a lot of people were saying, well, these are very expensive NFTs, and will it eventually settle down to a more reasonable price? And I think at that time it was the floor price was 100 and something jewels. Yeah. And so what we said was, yes, the price will go down in terms of jewels, but we can't guarantee that it's going to go down in terms of US dollars, because the underlying value of the token is something that the market decides. And even the base floor of the price in jewels is, again, something that the market will choose. So everyone will ask us and say, what are you going to do about this? Or what do you think it will happen? And our answer has always been, that's up to you guys. Yeah. We provide the game and the utility for these, and it's up to you guys to figure out what value that you want to place on that. And that value has been placed on it in terms of ROI by all these players, because if I spend $300 or $400 on an NFT, I can expect to earn that back within like 2 or 3 months if I actually play the game with that NFT.
Interesting. And still the cost of entry is lower than titles like Axie Infinity, where you're looking at a couple of $1,000 almost to join in. So I think it's still a compelling reason to jump in. And right now, as you say, because we're discussing the price of NFTs in Jewel, the prices obviously are down right now. So it's quite a good time to actually jump in. Interesting, man. Interesting. So thinking about the NFTs there and the kind of cost of getting started as well, is there any sort of plans in the future? Because we've seen with other sort of play to earn that they've opened up the idea of guilds and kind of universities almost, whereby, say, you've got a very good level hero, I can come in and rent that hero, have a little go inside DeFi Kingdoms, see how I feel about it. If I'm into it, then I can progress on my own after that. Is there any plans to kind of bring that in as a way to introduce people to the game a bit?
There is, yeah, because there is a very high barrier to entry right now in terms of you have to have some fair amount to put into the game in order to earn from it. And that's really how any investing prospect is. Like, you earn out, that's like really based on what you put in. But, you know, there's a lot of players, especially maybe like in like third world countries or places where they don't have as much opportunity, that still, you know, are eager for opportunities like this, but they don't have any capital to put up. So we are in the process of actually implemented a champion program, which is similar to a scholarship program where players that have a lot of assets, sorry, there's my dog, players that have a lot of assets will be able to sort of, through a guild or through like contracts, will be able to find other players that have time and can actually play the game with their heroes and earn for the player, and then earn a little bit on the side for them. So that's essentially connecting the players that haven't got a lot of assets themselves with other players who do have a lot of assets that haven't got a lot of time. Sort of a symbiotic relationship there where everyone can win.
Nice. So like the guys with the time are lending their time, and they're making an income for that. Sounds really. What did you call it there? Sorry, the official name that you said.
So champion program is what we're calling it. Yep. You can sort of assign a champion, which would be a player who will sign sort of a contract. Actually, it's a smart contract where they will have to play your heroes through X amount of quests in a set amount of time in order for them to qualify for the like reward that you assign onto that contract.
Nice. Very cool. It was something I wondered whether would be coming. So when can people expect that, Fox? Is it something that's kind of under wraps right now, or is there a date on that?
So currently there's no hard date. We are actively building in support for that into our quest system, into our like architecture, and it will probably roll out in phases where at the start we might just have the ability for people to assign a champion to whoever they wish, but still maintain control of their assets. So it's sort of like saying like I approve this address to use my heroes for quests, but they can't do anything else with them. And then as like a phase 2, there will be sort of a system in place where you can have players like actually like register as like champions and have sort of like a marketplace where I, as a player with assets, can see all of the champions that are sort of like able to quest my heroes, and I can sort of shop for who I want to use for that, and have a like review system where I can see, okay, like this champion has successfully completed 300 contracts and hasn't had issues, then I'm going to use them over somebody.
Yeah, nice. That's really cool. That's like kind of Fiverr, but for specifically for what you guys are doing. That's awesome. I really like the idea. Very cool, very cool. So just to think about the NFTs a little bit more, sorry, like you guys were you were heading in a great direction. And then around October time, I think it was, end of October, you announced your NFT marketplace, also known as the Tavern. And it kind of unleashed this power of NFT trading onto the platform. And in terms of the growth of it, of DeFi Kingdoms, it really started to take off there. And I just want to know, like, you know, what are the motivations there? Was it a plan from the start to always have the Tavern? And how has that kind of added value to DeFi Kingdoms?
Yeah, so it was a plan from the start, 100%. And, you know, like, there are a lot of existing NFT marketplaces that are out there, like OpenSea and NFT Key and a bunch of others. But the thing is, a lot of those marketplaces are set up to trade traditional NFTs that are sort of like static art pieces. And they aren't very flexible in terms of being able to search for like genes that are specific to our heroes, and the ability to handle things like even renting out a hero, because currently you can actually rent out a hero to other players to use for summoning. So to facilitate that, we also had to have something custom. And then on top of that, our NFTs have many genes that are very complex. They have stat genes, and they have genes that impact how they look. And so it's very, very different than any other NFT project out there. It's not just a cookie cutter NFT. And then at the same time, these like NFTs can earn experience points, level up, set their stats as they level up, and sort of like specialize in one stat or another. So we knew that we needed a very specialized marketplace that is able to show them in game for the users. And then at the same time, we had the opportunity to implement sort of like a fee on those as well, and earn that fee from hero sales and from hero summoning and other activities in the game that would cost jewels, and actually feed some of those jewels to a quest fund, which would then be used to like reward players that are running quests. So it kind of like feeds back into the ecosystem, and then also have some of those get put into the bank, so that anyone who stakes in the bank can earn a return on those like stake jewels there. And then having some of those also get fed into like the fund for marketing or for development to help to actually build like the actual game itself as well. So it just created this opportunity for us to sort of like use that economic activity to actually build the economy itself.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to think about, I mean, you guys are quite, I don't want to use the word lucky. You're not lucky. You've basically created something amazing, but it's not luck. But you've got a big team. You've got a strong team with multiple competencies. You've got in-house developers. You've got the strength to go out and complete this project, as it were. I think it's important to mention that some projects, you know, they're 3 or 4 people deep, even at this stage, and they're, you know, gaining users and whatever. They're still very small projects. So it's a nice luxury to have like what you guys are doing, as I'm hearing it, is keeping everything in-house, and that has been what I'm hearing is a large contributor to your success, is keeping things in-house. You could have put your NFTs on another marketplace and sacrificed all sorts of functionality, but you didn't. But this kind of keeping everything inside your own ecosystem seems to have really worked well for you guys. Would you say that's true?
Yes, I would say that's true, and it also kind of lends itself to our strategy going forward in terms of our expansions as well. Trying to create this connected ecosystem across chains will very much play into that as well, until we actually get to the point where you know, like our app will be a very self-sustaining real-world economy that has a lot of on-ramps into our game, to just easily like onboard other players into our game and have it be a really like the place to go to if you want to trade anything, because it's going to have so much liquidity there, and it's going to have so much utility there for the tokens that you're earning as well.
Nice. Can we go into the roadmap a little bit? Because what I see as the next kind of tick on the roadmap is kingdoms and land being introduced to DeFi Kingdoms, namely. So what's going on with this? Where are you going with that? And what will be the kind of possibilities here? Can people start to build inside DeFi Kingdoms?
Yeah. So from the very start, actually, the kingdoms were sort of, I guess, like the main thing that I was interested in terms of like creating a game where you would have land that you can buy, you can quest for it, you can basically claim it on the world map, and so it's the idea that you can see who owns these lands on the world map. I can see my neighbors, I can see other members of my guild on the map, and it's this real sort of MMORPG aspect where you can actually see and interact with other players on the internet there. And I think that's part of the fun of like stuff like this is you own this piece of land really on this like world online that can't be taken from you because it's a NFT. and the ability for you to improve upon that land is also there as well. So it's not currently out, but if you click into these lands, you can basically have sort of like a new zone where you can see some of the raw like resources, similar to like perhaps like Farmville or something like that, where it's like you have raw like resource nodes and then the ability for you to build buildings on it. Like Ebony Online and Crown of the Gods and some of those browser-based games where you have like castles that you can build and improve upon and then raise armies and then actually like do all kinds of things with that. So that's sort of what we're thinking there for lands, and heroes will play a big role in that, because in order to claim lands, you'll have to have your heroes go and quest and actually beat out other heroes to claim that land.
Oh, so you can't just buy.
So it's not just a straight up sale. Right. It's not just a straight up sale. And actually, this is a pattern that we've set pretty much all the way along. You know, like a lot of people say, oh, like play to win is sort of the other side of the coin pay to win is the other side of the coin of like play to earn. And that's true to a certain extent, but you have to consider, who are they paying to win? They are paying other players that are playing to earn. So it creates this symbiotic relationship from those that have a lot of assets that just want to be the best, and others that want to play the game and want to earn from it. It's not us trying to say, hey, we have all these lands, pay us for these lands. It's us saying, let's create a system where other people can play the game and earn these lands, and actually like earn those rewards from each other and increase their own assets and their own value, rather than us trying to do like a money grab there.
Like I'm just thinking about the way you're describing it. And do you think it will become, this year, I think we're going to see a plethora of kind of similar dApps arriving, similar platforms arriving. No, I don't think they're going to go to the level of depth that you guys are going to. But do you think to some extent, sorry, you will have to kind of educate, like, because I feel like today what we're doing is educating people around the kind of nuances of how DeFi fits into gaming. So do you think in the future, and this year more so, you'll need to kind of educate people on the differences between DeFi Kingdoms and your kind of standard GameFi dapp? Do you see that as something you might have to leap over pretty soon?
You know, it's possible, because like there are other offerings out there that are trying to do GameFi things on the blockchain, but I think the Fi part of it is important. Like, how does your game involve finances? Is it just that the NFTs are worth some amount because of just what you assign to it, or is it that you can actually have them do things to actively impact your state assets? So ours actually, your heroes can basically run quests that will allow you to earn more from your staked assets. So if you have staked assets on the DEX and you have a hero that specializes in like gardening, for example, you can have them run a quest that will let you earn an additional percentage off of your staked amount, which adds a like very real value to that. If you have like $1 million staked, one of those heroes could potentially earn you quite a bit. And then other heroes could help you to unlock some of those locked jewels early from like mining and things like that. So our NFTs can actually augment the amount that you can earn from the DeFi aspect. Other games, generally, they'll have things like Axes, for example, where you can have your NFTs play the game and like fight against each other, and trying to build the best team is really what drives that value. And ours will have that too. It'll have like combat and tournaments and all that as well. But ours really has another layer, another like level there, which I think actually DappRadar has illustrated very well, in that our app has a lot more volume than any other games out there, and that's because we're a DEX as well as a game, right? So we're actually seeing a lot of trading volume that actually feeds back into the game and gives more value and utility to the game. And then having the